Alright guys, it's my first tournament of 2026. We're up in Glasgow for an M25 event, and honestly, it's got off to the perfect start. First round main draw done, straight into the second round. I felt good out there, calm, sharp, and all the work we've been putting in during pre-season is starting to show. The patterns are clearer, the body feels strong, and more importantly, I'm backing myself in big moments. But now is where it gets serious. This is where the money gets bigger, and of course, the points. At the end of the day, that's what I'm really here for. So round 2 is going to be a tough one. I'm facing a very strong opponent, so it's time to fuel up, get ready, and head to the tennis centre. Honestly, I was really looking forward to this match. It was a great chance at the start of the year to really test my game out.
So guys, before we get into the tennis, I'd just like to say a big thank you to SwingVision for sponsoring today's video. So when I was at Wimbledon last year, I noticed every top player had an analyst in their team. Someone breaking down the stats and the patterns. And this is something that I felt I needed in my game. But the only problem is, analysts are expensive. And at Futures and Challengers level, it's just not realistic. So I started looking for a smarter, more cost-effective option. And after researching a few apps, the one that stood out to me was SwingVision. I reached out to them, and now I'm on the max subscription, which gives me full access to all the advanced stats, match breakdowns, and long-term tracking. And honestly, for me, it's been a game changer. Since using SwingVision, my UTR has gone up 1 whole point, from an 11.8 to a 12.8. It's crazy. So as soon as I finish a session, all my stats are there. Serve percentage, placement, rally length, winners, unforced errors, my most successful plays, and I'm not guessing anymore. If my backhand accuracy drops, we fix it. If my first serve percentage dips under pressure, we build a session around it. I also use it in matches. After a tight battle, instead of going off feel, I can actually see the patterns, where I lost points, what broke down, what I need to sharpen. That kind of clarity is massive when you're trying to climb. One of the best things about SwingVision is the automatic clipping. It cuts out all the dead time between points, so you instantly get clean rally footage without spending hours editing. It also tracks your progress over time, stores all your matches in one place, and even includes automatic line calling, which is seriously impressive. Like me, if you don't have a full team behind you, this is the closest thing that I've found to having your own analyst. If you use my link below, you get a free swing stick, normally worth $100, with a SwingVision Pro subscription, plus free international shipping. If you're serious about upgrading your game, go check it out through the link in my description and start training with real data behind you. Anyway, back to the video.
So my opponent in round 2 was fellow Brit James Story, ranked at number 455 in the world. He's won multiple titles at this level, so I knew it was going to be a tough match. If I was going to be in with a shout, I was going to have to play well and fight hard. Early on, I tried to set the tone that in my service games, I was going to go after it. I was going to serve big. And then in the returning games, I know that James has a very big serve and he likes to come forward either on ball 3 or a serve and volley. So early on, I wanted to show him that I was going to make a lot of returns and make it very difficult for him to hold. If that meant resorting to the chip return to get the points started, then I was going to do that. The conditions in here were pretty quick, and there were new balls at 7 and 9, so the atmosphere really favoured someone who was going to take the ball on. The key thing in my mind was margin. Continuing from the very solid performance in the first round, not really feeling like the level had to be too much better. I was really trying to build my way into the rallies using a deep ball down the middle. Again, this is really effective because it limits the angles, limits my opponent's options, and I knew this was going to be effective against James because he likes to come forward. I also had in my mind to be very disciplined when it came to passing. I was always going to try and make him play a tough first volley, and then if I had the chance, pass him with the second ball. Sometimes it's tempting, or there might be a bit of panic when somebody comes to the net, especially with volleys as good as James, to try and maybe get the ball past them on the first ball, and this just results in a lot of errors. A lot of the time, you're better off hitting the first ball straight at them, low, and then trying to pick off the pass with the second ball. Early on, this was proving to be a very effective strategy, and I was also trying to use the short slice to bring him in on my terms. Even if I was just chipping the return in, I was trying to stay up the court inside the baseline, especially on the second serve. This just made it a little bit easier to counteract the serve and volley, which I knew was going to be a big part of today's match. In the first set, there wasn't much separating us at all. There were a few chances early on to break, but on the whole, the level of serving from both of us was pretty ridiculous. I was also having to come out with some pretty ridiculous passes to get myself out of trouble. My feeling at 5-4 was pretty simple. Every return goes in, even if at times I was only just getting the ball back in. I know that from playing a lot of matches, this is where the pressure starts to kick in a lot. At 30 all, I thought if I could get a return back to neutral and get in a bit of a battle from the baseline, I was fancying my chances at a break point. I just had to stay disciplined, not force anything, and wait for my chance if I got a short ball. So, didn't get the break point, but I felt like I did a great job in this game of putting pressure on. It was time to reset and focus on getting a strong hold here at 5 all. I'd been serving really well this week, and especially in this first set. Now, it was all about trusting it and committing to it. In these quick conditions, I really wanted to just roll through my service games. If I could be really efficient, then it would give me more energy to go for the break. So at 6-5, James had a pretty routine hold. At 6 all, it was time for the tie break. And I didn't get off to a good start. I was really starting to feel the nerves here in this tie break. It felt like there was a lot of pressure on me to keep producing. But at the same time, I felt like I had the energy to work through it. I was just trying to put my focus into the basics. Playing for depth, good margin, and giving myself time to really settle in the rally. I found that I was really starting to feel comfortable 2 or 3 shots in. So I managed to keep a hold of the mini break, and it looked like at 4-1, I was in a pretty good position. But as you know, the margins in tennis are so small. 1 point can pretty much change everything. And with 2 pretty clinical points from James, the pressure was right back on me at 4-3. And I just couldn't believe that I missed that ball. One of the easiest passes that I've had in the whole match so far, but made up for it with a classic backhand down the line. At 5-4, I couldn't get carried away. Sticking to the plan of the 2-ball pass, I got the mini break back. I knew at 6-5 that I was going to have a chance to serve for the first set. I stayed solid and managed to take it. So I was going into set 2 with a lot of positive momentum. The goal for me now was just keeping that level. I knew what I was doing was effective and good enough to win the match. And at this stage, I really believed that. I knew at the start of the second set I was going to have to be prepared for another battle. I know that James is a great competitor, he's not going to go anywhere, he's definitely not going to give me the match, so I have to earn it. So at this stage I was putting my focus back into the tennis and what I can do to stay effective in this match. Even though at times it felt like my opponent was just rolling through his service games, serving and volleying, my goal was to make these games feel long, just to hang in there as much as possible. I knew that the break wasn't always going to be likely, but I had to make the balls and at least give it a shot. I also knew that later on in this second set, this could all be money in the bank. So I managed to fight my way to a break point in this third game. The feeling was just sticking to what I was doing the whole time, looking to get into a rally and working a point. Again, using that short slice to bring my opponent in. And I had a chance of the pass and took it. So it looked like everything in this match was starting to go into my favour. I was serving well, returning well, and off the ground felt about as comfortable as I ever have done. But from here, I may have been a breakup, but things definitely aren't simple. My opponent was starting to let go and play even more aggressive, putting more pressure on my serve. I knew that I was going to have to stay positive and keep committing to it. Sometimes easier said than done. I have no idea how I won that point, but I was just making my opponent play as much as possible, just sticking to doing the basics well. At 3-2, I played a pretty free game, serving it out to love and putting the pressure right back on my opponent. By this stage, my opponent was pretty much going all out in terms of aggression, serving and volleying on nearly every point, making it so difficult to return. He was also hitting his spots very well, so it's hard to do much more than just chip the ball back in, but at least I was making him play. It's hard to deny that there were definitely nerves at 4-3, but the goal was simple. Keep working through them and keep committing to what was working. I knew that the first 2 points in this game were crucial, but unfortunately could only get one of them. And by this stage, my opponent was rushing the net at any opportunity. This made the rallies feel uncertain and that the decisions became slightly rushed. So, back to 30 all. Probably one of the most crucial points in the whole match. My thinking here was to do what I'd been doing really well in the whole match. Staying disciplined from the baseline, not giving anything away in terms of angle or court position. The only thing that I regret is not going line a little bit sooner. I felt like I'd worked the opportunity well enough, but I think at this stage, this rally was just a little bit too passive. My opponent cutting the angle, taking time away, and forcing an error. And as a result, I was facing my first break point of the second set, which to me was given away cheaply. But again, there was no time to dwell on these mistakes. It was all about regrouping and going again, seeing if I could push myself and my opponent to get the break. Putting the situation into perspective, I was still in a great position. All I had to do was keep my head and keep fighting. And that's exactly what I did. So now I had a real chance again at 15-30, especially after such a crazy point. I knew that I had to stay strong and keep doing the same thing, and look for my chances to attack when it was the right time. And with a backhand up the line, brought about 2 more break points. My opponent saved the first one bravely, and the second one, he brought out the serve and volley again. I couldn't believe it. 2 chances gone in what felt like 10 seconds. It was difficult for me because I wanted it really badly, but my opponent was showing some real class and skill under pressure. But I was still there at deuce, and I was still fighting, and somehow managed to put the ball back in the court off a very good volley from my opponent. Another breakpoint chance. And I just couldn't get the ball back to a neutral position. And in the end, my opponent managed to fight through and get a pretty solid hold. So the pressure was right back on me at 5-4. It felt like I should have been serving for the match, and I was struggling to get over that fact. It really felt like in the last 2 games, the momentum had shifted. And I was doing my best to claw it back the other way. And I knew that any point at this stage could make a massive difference. At this stage, I was finding it difficult to really go after my first serve like I had been doing. The pressure of my opponent constantly coming in was starting to show, and I was now facing set point. The feeling of losing that second set honestly felt like I'd lost the match. There was frustration, there was definitely a little bit of fatigue, and it felt like I had a chance and I lost it. What I had to do now was put this situation into perspective. And it was hard because there was obviously a lot of anger there. There were a lot of thoughts of what I could have done better, but I now needed to shift my focus back into the present. This match was still alive. I went into this third set with the thought of everything I was doing in the second set was working, just needed 5% more commitment and a little bit more aggression. The intention to keep making things happen. This set was going to be as much about fight and focus as it was the tennis. I started off my first service game at the start of the third set, fighting a little bit of that momentum that didn't go my way at the end of the second. But I felt like my mind was in the right place, firmly back focusing on the process. And it didn't take long for my tennis to follow. Even though the match was long, I'd had chances to win, I was trying to pump myself up at any opportunity, knowing that any moment could be pivotal. I was really trying to bring the energy to every point. The mindset I had was my opponent was going to have to hit winners, and a lot of them, and he was going to have to return very well. I felt like because my opponent was the one who started serving in the third set, I was constantly under this pressure that if I messed up, that was the match done. And there were so many times in this third set where I was on the brink of getting broken, but my game was holding up under the pressure. And by this stage, my opponent's level of serving was on another level. Breaking him felt like a bit of an impossible task. Sometimes when your opponent is serving that well, all you can do is just focus on the hold. By this point, we'd been playing for well over 2 hours, and physically, I was starting to feel a little bit of fatigue. But the thought I had to myself is, this is why I put the hours in training. In the last 2 months, I've pushed through so many hard sessions. This is what the work is for. And I also knew whatever I was feeling, my opponent was probably feeling the same. My physicality, strength is something that I have a lot of confidence in. And I feel like my pain threshold is also pretty high. So I felt fully prepped, physically, mentally, going into the toughest part of the match. I was also smashing the bananas, flapjack, hydration tablets. I feel like nutrition is often overlooked, but it's so important if you want to sustain your level. My serve at times was really carrying me through this match. Sometimes I was just rolling through service games, saving myself so much energy. To be a little bit more efficient, I even started taking more risk on my opponent's serve when he was ahead in the scoreline. This was also helping to change the look, give my opponent a little bit of variety. It felt like my opponent was also being very efficient, using the serve and volley a lot, especially when the scoreline was starting to get very tight in this third set. It was almost like sometimes on my opponent's serve, I just wasn't getting the chance to play. It was a big serve into the spot, and then the next ball was just put away. So at 5-4 in the third, the nerves started to hit me. Each shot in this game, I was just really wrestling with the contact. I knew that if I messed up here, that was game done. All that effort for nothing. But I also knew at the same time, if I didn't commit to the ball, then my opponent would be all over it. At times it felt hard to move, but I was doing everything I could to force myself to commit to the ball. After coming through a tight game, I knew that 5-all would be a great chance to get a break. So I really pumped myself up, got the energy high, and got ready to scrap and fight. I saw my chance and I went for it. I knew in the tight moments my opponent was going to serve and volley, so I played a short cross return that brought about the first break point, which he saved pretty bravely, but I still had another one and just didn't get hold of the return at all. It honestly felt like a replay of the second set. Chances gone in what felt like seconds. So I managed to roll through a service game at 6-5, the time when I needed a comfortable hold the most. I was also thinking I really wanted to set the tone for the tiebreak. And to be honest, not sure I meant the chip return pass, but somehow it worked. I felt early on in this breaker, we were both locked in. Neither one of us was going to back down. I felt like the only thing that was going to separate us was the pressure. I knew at 5-4, it was crucial that I kept going after my first serve. Now was not the time to get passive. At 5-all, the nerves were going crazy. I knew I was 1 point away from match point, and I was just about managing to keep my focus on the tennis, working as hard as I could to get the ball between the lines. And it worked. After 3 hours and 10 minutes, I'd arrived at match point. And I missed the pass by just less than a foot. It was nowhere near my best return, but it was all I could do under the pressure. And at 6-all, I couldn't quite get the depth, and the pass just wasn't effective enough. And all of a sudden, what felt like a blink of an eye, I was now match point down. And just like that, the match slipped away from me. My thoughts straight away were anger, frustration, but I have to say that it was an incredible match. And I have to congratulate my opponent on an unbelievable effort. To be honest with you, straight after the match, I didn't stretch. I didn't even eat. I just had a coffee and got straight on the road. Sometimes that is the brutal reality of the game. My thoughts were going backwards and forwards. First thinking about that match point, being more positive on the return. Other thoughts going towards what would have happened if I held at 4-3 in the second set. There were so many things to think about from that match. And I knew deep down there were so many positives. I was just struggling to see them. After that match and the 5-hour journey home, my body really felt like it needed a day off. But I also knew that was probably the worst thing for me mentally. I struggled to sleep and honestly didn't feel that great. I'm not sure that I even wanted to be on court. I just knew that I wanted to do something. My goal in this session wasn't really to win, not even to hit the ball great. I didn't even want to work that hard. I just wanted to enjoy it, take the game back to a place where it should be, and just have a bit of fun. And sometimes it's amazing what this sport can do. After an hour of playing, I felt like a new person. I wouldn't say that I felt ready for the next week straight away, but I was starting to think about things slightly differently. I was thinking how far my level had come in this past year, how much I'd learned and improved, and how this was just the start of a very long year. And at some point, I'll be winning those long battles. I was really starting to believe this. And yes, if you're wondering, I did smoke Bevan. So I guess this is where I'm going to leave you until next time. Once again, I'd like to say a massive thank you for supporting my journey. I would say like and subscribe, but instead, get out there, get gritty, compete, and win.